Wars, cyber attacks, hostage and prisoner swaps. There is a lot to talk about in international news. So to dive into this in more detail, I'm bringing in Lisa Daftari, our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, who joins us from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome once again to Bridge City News.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so Lisa, on Friday, a 4-day ceasefire was announced. Hostages held by Hamas were to be returned, and Palestinian prisoners held by Israel were to be set free. So, Lisa, tell us, how has this process been going? I think we're in day 4 now, aren't we?
We are in day 4. We just had breaking news not too long ago where they have decided to extend this truce for another couple of days. This is what we actually assumed would happen, that, that Qatar, the United States, the intermediaries would try to convince Israel, the IDF, to kind of scale back on its retaliation against Hamas. Remember, the Israelis have 2 goals here, right? The primary one is to get the hostages back, and the secondary one is to decimate Hamas, which is really doing the world a favor and taking this terror organization off the map. But should the intermediaries convince Israel not to go back in, I wonder and I worry that they will be able to rearm and reload and start this process all over again. And it's really an existential threat that Israel lives with. Now, remember, Israel evacuated the Gaza Strip in 2005, giving it full control over to the Palestinians, who then elected Hamas into office in 2007. Now, since then, we have had so many attacks daily. And of course, the Iron Dome, which is the Israeli technology that catches those missiles, has done a wonderful job in keeping Israelis safe. But this past massacre on October 7th just demonstrated to the world how sophisticated and well-endowed Hamas has become with the help of Iran's regime in Qatar, in having funding, in having missiles, and having weapons. And then the world and the mainstream media cries about the Palestinian people in poverty and how they need help from Israel and the international community, but not from their own leadership. And that's really what brings us all together, is really explaining to the media, to the UN, to whoever needs to hear this, that this is a lopsided deal to begin with, right? So Israel got attacked on October 7th. I mean, brutal raping, setting people on fire. I mean, the words can't even describe how inhumane this attack was. And then now we're having a 3-to-1 prisoner to innocent civilian exchange. And each day we saw that there were some complications. Hamas demanding more, wanting humanitarian, they call it humanitarian, but they wanted the trucks to continue going in. And again, Jeanette, you and I talked about how we don't even know where these trucks are going or who's benefiting from the aid that's going into Gaza. So that's where we have it now. The truce has been extended, and let's see what comes out of this. Hopefully all the hostages get to go home.
Well, hopefully, because there's been so much celebration for these freed prisoners, and that's going on. And in the midst of all of this, Lisa, 2 men accused of collaborating with Israeli forces were executed by Palestinian factions in the West Bank. So what can you tell us about this?
This only demonstrates the brutality of Hamas. So when you have Palestinians killed by their own, this is two individuals who were accused of spying and collaborating with Israel, and they were publicly killed to show and demonstrate this symbolically that you cannot help Israel, the enemy. This is something that is indoctrinated within Palestinian society from a young age. They sing about killing Jews and becoming martyrs and getting rewarded for blowing themselves up. The way that they teach mathematics in school, if I kill 2 Jews today and 2 Jews tomorrow, how many have I killed? I mean, the Palestinian people do deserve better, but they deserve better from the beginning, from the time that they're young, under their own leadership. When the UN gives money to UNRWA to fund Palestinian schools, there should be a control. There should be some sort of just overlooking what they're doing and how they're teaching, and there should be better. I mean, how can we ever have peace when this is what they're doing? And you don't hear any outcry from the world when they're hanging 2 innocent Palestinians on alleged charges of espionage. But then, of course, they want to, just talk about Israel's war crimes, and the word genocide is thrown around so much. And again, Jeanette, I've talked about this a lot. I mean, my platform is obviously covering, world news and a lot of counterterrorism. We talk about all the innocent lives that have been lost in Syria and Yemen and Iraq and Afghanistan by the hands of Iran's regime. It hangs its own people. In the last 60 days, this war has been going on. How many innocent Iranians have been hanged for nothing, for no reason at all, for peacefully protesting? And the world is silent about all those killings, and they only want to focus on this one incident, and they want to talk about Israel's retaliation against Hamas, a terror organization. They're calling this genocide.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And of course, at the same time now, Turkey and Iran are looking to have a growing friendship as Turkish President Erdogan spoke with his Iranian counterpart about the war between Israel and Hamas and U.S. involvement. But international criticism, of course, of Israel is growing. So, Lisa, can you maybe shed some light on this situation?
Turkey has, for the past decade or so, has been a frenemy of the West, of the United States in particular. They have wanted to double dip, meaning they want to be considered a Western nation, a modern nation in the Middle East. They want to be a part of all these acronymed organizations, but yet they also want to have a hand in what's going on in global terrorism and siding with extremists. And they haven't made the distinction yet that they will stand against terrorism. As a matter of fact, they've been quite vocal about their support of Hamas against Israel. They have been obviously growing closer to Iran's regime, who is funding this entire war against Israel. And now we have it, tangible evidence where you have Erdogan meeting with Raisi, the president of Iran, really kind of cementing that relationship and really taking a side and taking a stance that is much more visible than we've seen ever before, where it was more like Turkey becoming more Islamist, cracking down on many laws inside the country, closing a lot of publications that were, kind of moderate or against the government. So definitely we're seeing a shift in Turkey moving more towards Iran. And of course, Qatar is the same thing. I mean, Qatar is considered the West's, this honest broker and is involved right now in brokering this truce or the hostage and prisoner deal between Hamas and Israel. But yet, we know that the Qataris are funding Hamas. We know that they're housing and hiding and allowing Hamas leaders to live there lavishly. Why aren't they being called out on it? I think there's a lot that the West needs to do under the United States' leadership, of course, and we're not seeing this very, very strong leadership from the White House. And of course, it will have its consequences as we're seeing.
Right. Okay. Well, we might not be seeing it from the White House, but we're seeing a little bit of it in London. So, of course, there's been sizable turnouts, obviously, at Hamas rallies around the world. We've been seeing that, right, Lisa? But on Sunday, thousands of people assembled in London for a demonstration against anti-Semitism, and among them was former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So organizers are reportedly promoting this event as the largest protest of anti-Semitism since, 1936?
Yeah, this is wonderful because it is in response to the pro-Hamas protests we have seen in London that have been horrific. I mean, they have been extremely large in size, extremely violent. The police has basically backed down because it's been so difficult. They've even thought about bringing in military to help the police. This is in response to that, to say, there is a counter voice here, and it might not be violent and it might not be as loud, but it is definitely strong and it is definitely united. And that was a wonderful thing to see. Of course, Boris Johnson, setting an example. And I'll tell you who didn't set an example was the BBC, who told their reporter not to attend and not to cover it. This should be very much underscored. If you're going to the mainstream media for information about this war, please know where you're going and how it is influenced and how it is biased. Imagine a reporter not being allowed to cover something that's going on that is that sizable, that is that important. On the flip side, we also had a BBC reporter who said, oops, I got the hospital report wrong. If you recall, it was a bomb that the world, and very quickly Hamas told the mainstream media, oh my gosh, Israel bombed the hospital, thousands have died. And meanwhile, it wasn't even true. And it was a mislodged missile from Palestinian Islamic Jihad that landed in a parking lot that there were no casualties, and definitely not in the thousands. So this BBC reporter said, yes, I got it wrong, but I'm not remorseful at all. So he's basically saying, I'm glad that my bias allowed me to report incorrectly so that people think a certain way. I mean, This is crazy. This is not ethical journalism. This is not where people should be getting their news, and we should all be informed. There should be a, the small font at the bottom should say, it comes with bias. This is not actual reporting.
Oh, the power of the media, huh? It's unreal. And of course, meanwhile, there in the U.S., there are confirmed reports that a municipal water authority in Pennsylvania was hacked by a cyber group backed by the Islamic Republic of Iran over the weekend. So what's going on there, Lisa?
Right. So we know that the Iran regime, besides funding all their different terror proxies around the world, and especially in the Middle East, they have also been fortifying their cyber capabilities. They have a cyber army, very proud of it. They have bots on Twitter. They have people going, to kind of respond on Instagram and all social media platforms. But on a more sophisticated and complex level, they have these hacks against major infrastructures. And over the weekend, they hit a Pennsylvania water company, and of course, they're flexing their muscles. They're testing out, how far can we take this? And of course, there have been no consequences for Iran's regime. It is funding terror. It has a hand, obviously, in a complete hand in funding the current war against Israel, funding many different terror proxies, hitting the United States' assets in Syria and Iraq, and yet they get benefits. They get money. They just got another $10 million released to them from $10 billion rather released to them from the Biden administration to be able to, collect those funds. We've had vital sanctions removed from Iran's regime so that they've been able to sell oil upwards of $60 billion in terms of their oil revenue. And of course, we have seen that they are begging for a deal. So when Washington keeps going back to them and saying, pretty please, we shouldn't expect anything else than for them to really push the envelope. And in this case, with cyber attacks, reminding the United States that they have these capabilities.
Yeah, no, unbelievable. And we're so focused on the Israeli-Hamas war right now. We need to remember there's another whole war going on between Russia and Ukraine. And very importantly, this past Saturday, at least, 5 people were injured in Kyiv in what city officials are calling the most massive Russian drone strike on the Ukrainian capital since the start of the war. So what is this? 60 drones were intercepted during the airborne assault, Lisa?
Where did those drones come from? The Iran regime is giving Russia drones. Again, we are fueling both sides of this war. And I don't know if people are paying attention. The United States is giving billions of dollars to Ukraine to fight or to at least ward off Russian invasion. On the other side, we're giving money to Iran's regime, which is making drones and selling them to Russia, which it is using against Ukraine in this war. So it's frustrating to watch this, because as there's more talk and international pressure for some sort of ceasefire or some sort of resolution, on the other hand, we're seeing Russia really up the level of fighting, and attacks are getting more brutal every day. Where this will go, we don't know, but it doesn't look like there's any off-ramp for Russia anytime soon.
Right, and it's been going on for almost 2 years, and now what we're seeing, U.S. and Germany are reportedly pushing Ukraine to negotiate with Russia. So this seems to contradict what their past actions have shown. So what are you able to tell us about this?
Yeah, so of course, as you said, we're coming up on 2 years. So the international community obviously wants to for this to come to an end. We all do, right? This is a senseless war. So as they're pushing Ukraine to come to some sort of resolution with Russia, at the same time, we're seeing that Russia is probably not interested unless they get everything, and more. So it will be interesting to see if Ukraine even agrees to it, which I don't think Zelensky will do that. I think the only thing that Zelensky will ask for is more money, and not for any truce or any ceasefire. It doesn't look like either side or either man wants to back down anytime soon, but we are seeing international pressure to at least move towards that direction.
Yeah. Okay, so turning our attention now over to China. So in Beijing, a surge of respiratory illnesses across China has drawn the attention of the World Health Organization. So China's health ministry says the illness is caused by the flu and other known pathogens, but not the coronavirus. So how are they looking to deal with this one, Lisa?
Yeah, it looks like they're not being transparent about this, just like COVID, and that's what's scary about this. I talked to some physicians over the weekend actually about this, and they think it's this very serious pneumonia, which could be as deadly as COVID was. They're worried that that will be the new flu that hits us here in the West in this coming season, unfortunately. As you know, pneumonia, very similar to COVID, a respiratory illness that requires hospitalization, ventilation, oxygen, et cetera. So something that is, we're watching, and obviously we can't get any straight answers out of China, where this came from and why why its origins are leading us back to China is obviously the main question here. But on this end, we will learn how to deal with it just like we have. But again, more pressure on China, more pressure on Iran's regime, more pressure on Qatar. We're just not seeing it, and of course, the consequences are here, and we're seeing them.
Yeah. She is our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles. Great to have you on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.